Morning and welcome to the February 8th, 2022 Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors meeting that I hereby call to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Hart.
Here.
Supervisor Nelson.
Here.
Supervisor Lavanino.
Here.
Supervisor Williams.
Here.
And Chair Hartman.
Here. Please stand and join me in the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. CEO Miyasato, do you have a report for us today?
Chair Hartman, I do. Just a quick announcement. We've had some questions recently about utility costs and fees. As you recall, residents of the unincorporated county are part of 3CE, Central Coast Community Energy. And I asked Ashley Watkins from our Sustainability Division to just quickly respond to some of that to get information out and where people can find more information on the website. So, Ashley?
Good morning, Chair Hart, members of the board. Yes, we have been hearing some concerns from residents about increased energy bills, and I just wanted to assure the board as well as members of the community that those increased bills are not as a result of joining Central Coast Community Energy. So Central Coast Community Energy is still providing rates that are on average 2% below Southern California Edison. We attribute the increase to a recent increase in transmission and distribution charge that took place in October. And that's actually related to Edison's delivery of energy and not as a result of Central Coast Community Energy. We also typically see there's an increase in energy use during the winter because people are home, they're using more appliances, and that's even more exacerbated with COVID. So if people are looking for more information, they can go to Central Coast Community Energy's website. And that is www.3cenergy.org. And they have a call center number there where people can call and ask more questions about their bills.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Supervisor Williams.
Well, and I'll phrase it as a question for the purpose of the report. First, can you articulate what the SEE rate increase, at what scale is very significant? And then even though we're getting more of the questions from the South, I suppose, the rate increase in PG&E was much higher. So isn't it true that now the PG&E rate is 30 to 40% higher than the 3CE rate for those living in Mid and North County?
Yes, Supervisor Williams, that's correct. PG&E's rates are typically quite a bit higher than Southern California Edison's, and they recently had another rate increase. The Southern California Edison increase was, I believe, about 2 cents a kilowatt hour and was supposed to result in an average of a $10 increase per average household. But I think it's important to note that, transmission and distribution rates, which are the actual delivery of energy to a customer, they typically make up about 2/3 of your bill, where the generation cost, the actual procurement of energy, which is what Central Coast Community Energy is doing, is typically only 1/3. So it's a much smaller chunk of your bill. And also just noting that, the reason why Edison is increasing these transmission and distribution rates is related to ongoing grid infrastructure development and hardening the grid to prevent things like wildfires.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Ms. Watkins. So we need to approve the minutes of February 1st, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved?
Second?
And could we have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Hart,
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson,
Aye.
Supervisor Lavanino,
Aye.
Supervisor Williams,
Aye.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
And do we have any announcements today, Madam Clerk?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, we have no changes to our agenda today, but I do have a couple quick announcements to remind the public. I would like to remind the public that the Board of Supervisors meetings are being interpreted and broadcast live in Spanish. We are broadcasting our meetings in Spanish both for Cox Cable subscribers in South County as well as Comcast Cable subscribers in North County. Members of the public can now view our meetings in Spanish by turning on the secondary audio programming, also known as SAP or SAP, under their language settings. That information is also being currently provided through the TV scroll. Lastly, I would like to remind the public who are participating in our meeting today of the board's updated methods of public participation. For the Board of Supervisors' methods of public participation and to provide public comment on general public comment or an item on the board's agenda, please see page 2 of the agenda. Members of the public can attend meetings in person in both the Santa Barbara Board Hearing Room chambers as well as the Santa Maria Board Hearing Room chambers. Please note we are following all local and state guidelines and requiring indoor mask usage for everyone over 2 years of age, regardless of vaccination status. If you attend the board meeting in person, you will be required to wear a face covering, mask, or face shield with drape at all times, regardless of vaccination status. Information regarding how to properly wear, how to properly wear a mask has been posted throughout both locations. If you do not have a mask that fits properly, we can provide you with one. Additionally, for those unable to wear a mask for any reason, we can provide you with a face shield with drape. Lastly, public health is encouraging social distancing due to the highly infectious Omicron variant, and this pertains to both hearing room chambers. I would also like to remind the public that if you require any special accommodations, please contact the clerk of the board to make that request, preferably on the Friday prior to the board meeting. Individuals that would like to provide verbal public comment virtually may do so via Zoom by registering in advance via the link available on page 2. After registering, you will receive a confirmation email containing important information about joining the virtual meeting. Once the chair has announced the item you want to comment on, please join the meeting with the information provided. You will be placed on mute until it is your turn to speak. The clerk will call you by name. When removed from mute, you will hear a notification that your line has been unmuted. If you are using a touch-tone phone, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Each person may address the board for up to 3 minutes, and this is at the discretion of the chair. If you have any questions, please contact the clerk of the board's office at area code 805-568-2240. Again, that's 805-568-2240. That concludes my announcements for today.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Turning to our administrative agenda, I have that Supervisor Nelson has pulled item A1 and A4, and a member of the public would also like to speak on A4. And Supervisor Williams has pulled A9 and A3. Are there any additional items that anyone would like to see pulled from the administrative agenda? Anything in Santa Maria? And nothing here. Okay, let's go first to A1. Madam Clerk, would you read that into the record?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, administrative item number 1 is from the Community Services Department. It is to consider recommendations regarding the approval and execution of a subordination agreement subordinating a County of Santa Barbara as successor agency to the former County of Santa Barbara Redevelopment Agency, loan to a cash-out refinancing loan to Timothy John Werner and Richard Paul Gilman, trustee of the Richard Paul Gilman 2017 Family Trust, for the Paradise Ivy LLC Plaza Lofts.
Thank you. Supervisor Nelson?
Yeah, I have a few questions for staff.
And I believe Dinah Lockhart is here. And she's
Hi.
coming to the podium right now. So go ahead, Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, I guess my first question is this a required action by the board, or is this something that we have some discretion on?
Good morning, Chair Hartman and Supervisor Nelson. No, actually, this is something that the board has discretion on. In the staff report, we provide the board a number of options that were considered by staff, and they are still available to the board. One of those options include option number 1, which is on page 2. Option 2, which is to take no action. So the county could choose not to subordinate its $717,000 redevelopment loan to a new bank loan. That's certainly an option for the board, and there's several others there.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lockhart. I guess I just have a concern about, taking cash out of this project, potentially at the top of the real estate market. And if in the future, things go down and the property is lost, the county's investment in the project might be at risk. And so I'm not fully comfortable with that. I like to, and I know this is not my district. I was just looking at it from a fiduciary role that we have here at the county to make sure that we're protecting those taxpayer dollars that went into the project to assure affordable housing here. So, I don't know if there's anybody else out there that makes them nervous. It makes me a little nervous, but I will happy to hear if that's a concern of any of my other colleagues.
I will chime in because this first came up when it was in my district, and then it went to Supervisor Hart's district. But I think staff agreed with you, Supervisor Nelson, but there's enough equity in the property that they believe that the county is covered. Supervisor Hart?
Yeah, I just wanted to add too that I know County Council has worked with the department very closely to make sure that the options that are available to the board were properly vetted legally, and this seems like, the course that is protective of the county's financial interests. It would be nice to be able to leverage this moment to have some additional affordability in this project, but it doesn't appear that that is a realistic legal option available at this time.
Supervisor Williams?
I'll chime in, and I Brown Act with briefly with Supervisor Hart, but I had the same concerns that you did, Bob, and I think the most important thing, of course, is that we make sure that the owners get into compliance with our affordability guidelines and adhering to the affordability guidelines that exist. And I understand that that's been questionable. And so to me, this is an opportunity to highlight something that isn't working well, and that we hope can be addressed. And if there's anything from the board that's needed to address it, I think you have at least 4 interested supervisors, probably 5.
Well,
Supervisor Nelson?
Chair Hartman?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think I guess the question is, if there is anything like that needs to be done, wouldn't this be the time to make sure that we're all comfortable there? I'm okay with deferring to my colleagues. I mean, this is in their area, either that they represented previously or now. So if everybody else is comfortable with it, I'm ready to move forward. I just, it caught my eye as something that we don't necessarily have to do. And, that there's already problems on the property, or if, there's some other issues, this might be the time to look at it. The thing is here is we're not preventing them from taking cash out. It's the question about whether we subordinate our equity in the property to this new loan. And, they may not get the same terms, but, we could still stay in our number 1 spot, or at least above any new cash outs or refinancing. So again, just as a fiduciary on this board, that's what I was looking at, but I do ultimately defer to my colleagues on this.
Ms. Lockhart, did you have anything else you would like to add to the conversation?
No, I would just simply add that we continue to work with the property owners on compliance, and they have been open to receiving staff's recommendations on improving documentation procedures and so forth. So that's all that I would add.
Okay, so is there a motion to change staff recommendation? If not, we'll just include it with the balance of the agenda. Unless
Sounds good.
Supervisor Nelson, you'd like a separate vote.
I would not.
Okay. Then we'll include it with the balance. And then could we go directly to A4, Supervisor, read that into the record, Madam Clerk, and then Supervisor Nelson, you can make your statement.
Chair Hartman and members of the board, administrative item number 4 is from the County Executive Office. It is to reconsider the circumstances of the existing state of emergency, and we have 4 requests to speak on this item from the public.
Supervisor Nelson, did you want to go first?
I would defer until
Okay.
after public comment. Thank you.
All right.
And Chair Hartman, members of the board, we are going to begin on Zoom with Maria Kestner to be followed by Tom Becker. And I would like to note for members of the public who are on Zoom, we will have a timer running here in the hearing room that you will be able to see. Thank you. Maria?
Ms. Kestner?
Okay, hello, you had to unmute me.
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Our state of emergency is so dire that the County of Santa Barbara had no COVID report to present to the public during the board meeting of February 1st, 2022. After Nick Welsh from The Independent brought us an article written in The Independent on January 12th, 2022, and I quote, stating the number of new COVID-related hospitalizations could increase to 848 patients in the next 4 weeks, and the number of patients sent to the ICU would jump from 10 to 241. More dramatically, the number of deaths, they were told by Public Health Director Vando Reynoso, could shoot from present 578 to no less than 781 by the month's end. Supervisor Bob Nelson responded by castigating the numbers, the reckless and irresponsible adding, they only promote panic. Later, he suggested they could provoke lethal fodder to teens already teetering on the brink of suicide. Nick Welsh also wrote, and I quote, the real issue is not so much bad capacity as it is staffing. As of February 6th, the average 7-day case rate is 146 with 1 death on a total caseload of 8,483 cases in Santa Barbara County. Total death rate of the pandemic is 614 individuals. The total of 483 cases on 1 Omicron death is a death rate of 0.001% per 7 days. Total death rate is 0.76% on all 3 variants of COVID together over a two-year period. We've heard the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, that 75% of those who died with COVID had 4 to 5 comorbidities. We also know the CDC group pneumonia, influenza, and COVID deaths together, called the PIC deaths, as per CDC website. And we know that the PCR test is not very accurate. And I can attest to that because my daughter tested positive for the Omicron, rinsed her nose with saline solution, and 2 days later tested negative. And she had the Omicron a month prior to that. Doug Williams voiced his concern 2 weeks ago about people from out of town calling into board meetings, yet he is apparently not concerned about federal dollars buying up local and state governments around the country through the CARES Act. He's also not worried about a wide open southern border where the Biden administration is allowing illegal immigrants in from all over the world, flying them around the US for their final destination. And last but not least, a state of emergency can only be called if the threat overwhelms the current resources of the state, which it doesn't. And the orders and regulations shall be in writing and take effect immediately on issuance. The temporary suspension of any state ordinance regulations rules shall remain in effect until the order regulation is rescinded by the governor. The governor proclaims the termination of the state of emergency.
Didn't realize it had that kind of a noise, but Ms. Kestner, you did recommend that we have a timer that you could see, and so this is our first attempt at it. And may we have our next public speaker, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Chair Hartman and members of the board, my apologies. We will try and figure that out. Our next speaker on Zoom is Tom Becker, to be followed by Amy Smith. Thank you.
Mr. Becker?
And Tom, it appears you are unmuted. If you can please proceed with your comments. If you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
Should we go to Dr. Smith and then come back to Mr. Becker?
Yes, thank you. We will proceed with Amy Smith, and then we will attempt to go back to Tom Becker. And Tom, you do have a call-in information on the Zoom invitation that was sent to you, so perhaps you can call in with your phone if you're having issues with your computer microphone. Thank you. And we will now go to Amy Smith. Amy?
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Hartman. Good morning, Supervisors. I am very concerned, as well as Maria Kestner, about the state of emergency declaration and the standards used to justify that, especially considering that as a society, we've lived with the flu for, a long time, and that takes many lives every year. Although it seemed to vanish during COVID, but that's probably because of categorization errors. But at the same time, having the option to declare a state of emergency pretty much at any time because of a low-level deadly disease that takes vulnerable people is a very chilling prospect. And I've been very nervous about this since March 2020, and many, many other people have. And I am very concerned to know what the bar for considering something an emergency now is in your minds as you made this decision to continue declaring this an emergency. We were told in the beginning 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We understood even then that you can't stop an epidemic. The only hope was to slow it down a little so that it wouldn't overwhelm healthcare facilities, so that things could be brought, in line to make sure there was enough capacity to treat people. But then we find out that effective treatments that were figured out were suppressed and kept from the public, and doctors were punished for using them, and people were censored for talking about them, including medical doctors with personal experience treating people with these things from places like YouTube and the mainstream media. They get slandered as disinformers. And so, the maintenance and the inflation of the situation into an emergency rather than trying to address and minimize the problem is, unfortunately, there's a lot of evidence that that's what took place and continues to take place, because the hospital still doesn't allow people to have things like ivermectin when it's been shown very effective in early treatment all over the world. So, this is what has to be, to get the confidence of the public, we need to know what you're basing emergency on. Where is the bar? And is that just something that can be brought up anytime that is politically convenient for any reason? And rights can be suspended, which, the Constitution doesn't say emergency. It doesn't say we can be ordered, all manner of our lives can be controlled, businesses can be shut down, all these things. Because of an emergency, especially on the level of a flu, something we live with every year. So this is very serious, and I look forward to hearing what the justification for continuing to declare an emergency for a very treatable version of this variant. The death ticker is down, thank God, so people are not dying in Santa Barbara County. That's great news. What are you doing?
Thank you. Supervisor Williams?
Well, first of all, people are still dying. But secondly, the speakers are straying far from the topic. The question at hand is whether the circumstances around the pandemic are significant enough, whether people should be able to provide testimony through Zoom, or whether we can meet virtually. We've always met in person, but we provided the opportunity for some people to do it virtually if that is safer for them. So I just ask the public speakers to kind of not drift from the subject matter.
I believe that they're questioning the underpinnings of an emergency, so I think it's legitimate. Is Mr. Becker back yet?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, Tom Becker will be calling in, and he needs a few moments to do that. So we are going to our speaker here in the Santa Barbara hearing room chambers, Gretchen Murray, and then we will return to Tom Becker. Gretchen?
morning, Supervisors. Thank you for letting me speak. I have a slightly different approach than the last caller. My question would be to you is to define the criteria by which you can release the emergency or reduce it. And that should be publicly available, something that we can all read and understand and potentially have input towards. So that being said, my hope is as we go through these things, we can address things such as people who are requiring masks, people who are requiring vaccination status. We don't need it for influenza. So in the future, this is becoming endemic, we shouldn't be needing it also for COVID. And that's something that there's a time frame, and I understand that, but it's something that I think this Board of Supervisors should pay attention to. And they should also pay attention to when we need a state of emergency, what are the criteria for establishing that? And I understand death rates were bad in the beginning. I understand they're coming down. I don't know at what level you'll consider the fact that we need to get rid of this, because we're all really tired of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Chair Hartman, members of the board, it appears that Tom is not rejoined Zoom, so perhaps we can move his comments to later on in the agenda.
All right. Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hartman. I guess I've first got a question, because I think the public needs to get some clarification, or at least understanding the way I do, that currently the state of emergency that we have to require various restrictions in the community, specifically the mask mandate, that's not coming from this board. Is that correct?
CEO Miyasato.
Supervisor, through the chair, we are under a health emergency that was imposed in two ways. One was that the public health officer declared a health emergency. In addition, the Board of Supervisors did proclaim a local emergency.
And thank you, CEO Miyasato. But at this point, any mask restrictions or many of these state of emergency provisions are coming from our public health officials.
Supervisor, through the chair, you are correct. We have a health order that requires indoor mask mandates.
And the reason why I wanted to make sure that was clarified, especially for those public commenters, was because I get many emails asking our board to vote to end the mask mandate. And I want to make sure that the public understands that that's not something that falls on the shoulders of this board within our purview. This time that falls on the shoulders of Dr. Anzorg and Dr. Del Reynoso. But what we do have under our purview is whether we are going to continue with the social distancing or Zoom meetings, so we can have social distancing as part of, in context of the public health order. So, this item here, I'm going to renew my objection. I support the practice of holding remote hearings. And I look forward to the legislation amending the Brown Act to reflect the advancements in technology and how technology can make government more accessible to the public. I do object to the need and rationale for a state of emergency and need to continue to impose restrictions and mandates. Under current circumstances, requiring social distancing and mask mandates don't make sense. When California can have the Rose Bowl, the Golden Globes, an NFC championship game, and the Super Bowl, but we're telling the public that we on the dais can't be 6 feet apart or in the room, it just doesn't make sense. Restrictions and mandates undermine the public's trust and confidence in public health, and I cannot support this item, so I'd like a roll call.
And Mr. Becker has come back, so let's give him an opportunity to speak first.
Yes, Chair Hartman and members of the board, we will now go to Tom Becker, who is our final speaker on this item. And Tom, using a touch-tone phone, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. We have unmuted you on our end, so you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. You are still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. I submitted a letter this morning, late submission. I'm just going to read it into the record and then make a comment. The Public Health Department, Santa Barbara County Public Health Department. The state of California is lifting the mask mandate for indoor venues except for unvaccinated persons. If the county of Santa Barbara follows the state's course of action, then the county must explain the science behind lifting mask requirements except for unvaccinated persons. For the county to scientifically justify keeping the mask mandate in place for unvaccinated persons, then the county must answer the following scientific questions, and the answers must scientifically show that unvaccinated persons have a measurably higher COVID-19 transmission rate compared to both boosted and unboosted vaccinated persons. Now, I have 3 questions submitted, basically asking the transmission rates between unvaccinated persons, the transmission rate for vaccinated persons who have received the booster, and the transmission rate for vaccinated persons who have not received a booster. The state of California said, I think on February 15th, they're going to lift the mask mandate for everyone except unvaccinated people. Well, the state would have to scientifically show their reasoning behind that. The county can do the same. The county of Santa Barbara can follow the state's direction, or the county of Santa Barbara can maintain the mask mandate for everyone. That's up to you, or actually it's up to the county health. Now, if the county keeps the all-inclusive mask mandate, which they're allowed to do, that would then be conclusive proof that the county believes that vaccinated and unvaccinated people are equally transmissible. You're equal. Well, if vaccinated and unvaccinated people are equally transmittable, then the county's employee testing requirement for unvaccinated people is unlawfully discriminatory. Between a rock and a hard place on this one. I will say that there's a lot of evidence out there that with the Omicron variant, that both vaccinated and unvaccinated people are being equally infected and they're equally transmissible, which would mean you either have to get rid of the mask mandate for everybody or keep it in place for everyone. You can't discriminate when there's no difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. And we have one final speaker, Madam Clerk, and with that, we close the queue for public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hartman and members of the board. Our additional speaker is Justin Shores on Zoom, and we will now go to him. Justin?
Yeah, thank you. I do really like the ability to come into Zoom and to be able to participate. So I do like the what Chair Nelson or Supervisor Nelson said about keeping Zoom somehow. So if there's some way we could find a way to have both in person and Zoom, so we could still participate, and especially since you guys have such a long schedule, a long day, it would be, I think the Board of Supervisors would be the most important for that to happen. Also, I do appreciate the comments on how it doesn't make sense to keep the state of emergency going. I really think that we need to start finding an off-ramp for that. So hopefully Dr. Ansorg and Dr. Reynoso can come up with something that goes with logic and not just indefinite mandates forever. So please reconsider the state of emergency. This is out to the county health as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shores. And that ends our public comment on this item, brings it back to the board. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Supervisor Lavenio. Thank you. I was just curious because of the fact that, I had so many people contact me in the last couple of days based on, the news that was coming out that CDPH would be removing the mask mandate. And, the first question obviously is, well, what's the county going to do? Because I think we're going to be in a really weird position. I think we've probably been there before, but now it's going to be even more difficult if direction comes down from the state. And I have already seen all over social media that, hey, the mask mandate's being lifted on the 15th or 16th. And I'm curious as to the timeline of when public health is going to announce something for the county.
CEO Miyasato?
Supervisor Lavanina through the chair. So Dr. Ansorg and Dr. De Reynoso are looking at that right now. They have been since yesterday. The state reached out to the public health officers just shortly before they went public. So this was news to the public health officers throughout the state. They were reviewing that and they hope to have a decision out later this week.
And our current mask mandate goes through when? Is it March 1st?
It goes through the end of this month, I believe.
End of the month. Okay. I've continued to support this state of emergency request, but I think it is, and I've kind of been pushing this to get to the end of the rainbow here. I think CDPH is starting to acknowledge that, we are in a transition period. And I think for us, that next step in my mind is to remove the emergency status. So I'll also be supporting removal of the emergency status.
Supervisor Hart?
Yeah, I think that the word transition is the right one. The state is apparently adjusting its approach, and Dr. De Reynoso and Dr. Ansorg are going to take all the information, the local circumstances into consideration when they make their decisions about the local public health order. But, we got to remember too, that right now, our transmission rate is very, very high still. It's coming down at a great rate. It's positive news. People have responded by wearing masks and doubling down their efforts, and that's causing the case rates to drop. But they're still very, very high. I think they're close to 80, which, back in the day when we were trying to shoot to get down to 7, it's 10 times what our goal was in the previous rounds. And so I don't think we have to get down to the old benchmarks because the dangerousness of this particular strain are proving to be less than they were in previous outbreaks, and that's good news. But the number of cases produce large numbers that have a large number of people in the hospital and deaths. So we're not out of the woods yet. Maybe we can, we can use all kinds of analogies, light at the end of the tunnel, whatever. But we just need a little more patience from people. No one is talking about extending the mask order indefinitely. We're talking about transition. We're talking about the right time to do the right thing in the right moment. And, it's just going to require a little more patience, not months, maybe weeks. And I think that people will be really relieved when we get to that place and it's safe and we can adjust our habits accordingly.
Thank you. And this will be on our agenda, our D item for next week. Supervisor Williams?
Well, I agree with Supervisor Hart's comments on the general picture. I view this as an operational question, right? The speakers have sort of put the entirety of their movement on this one item, when this item is really about what are the circumstances in a local jurisdiction, and are there those circumstances that would behoove people to play it safe and in the hearing process have social distancing and remote participation. I just find it ironic that all the people who enjoy remote participation are essentially asking us to vote no and would thereby terminate the ability to have that kind of participation. But I guess I'm ready to continue to vote for it one more time. But if cases are way down, I would be prone to vote against it in the future because I don't think the board should be beaten up for basically operationally doing what those members of the public want to be able to do, which is to offer remote participation.
So will you make the motion?
So moved.
Second.
And would you call the vote, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Hart?
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson?
No.
Supervisor Lavanino?
No.
Supervisor Williams?
Aye.
And Chair Hartman?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
Madam Clerk, would you read item A3 into the record?
Chair Hartman and members of the board. Administrative item number 3 is from the Community Services Department, General Services Department, and the County Executive Office. It is to consider recommendations regarding a ground lease agreement, service agreement, and authorization of job order contracting for the establishment of the Dignity Moves Santa Barbara project, Dignity Moves, at county-owned property located at 1016 Santa Barbara Street, Santa Barbara, California, APM number 029-212-019, and this is in the 1st District.
Supervisor Williams?
Well, I pulled this as to talk about this project, not for a separate vote. I just think it's important to highlight the progress that has been made, and we do have our contract Good Samaritan here if there's questions, but specifically this is the ground lease and the operating agreements for the partnership with Dignity Moves at Garden Street, which will provide 33 temporary housing spots. And it's part of the larger picture of the county in this year, not including what is proposed at Super 8. We're bringing 100 units online. That's the Hedges House of Hope, the 20 at Bridge House, and the 33 at Dignity, so the 50 at Hedges Houses of Hope, 20 at Bridge House, and 33 at Dignity. And if you're watching this hearing and you know of a parking lot that is leasable, the county is looking for opportunities that are of the appropriate scale to house 50 folks. And I know this is, difficult stuff. I've often said homelessness is, tackling homelessness is one of those things where the solutions always end up being more unpopular than the problem is. As much as people sometimes, and overwhelmingly these last few years, want solutions to homelessness, the reaction we usually get to any specific project is, this isn't the right place. Well, Greg, you've been in this for 25, 30 years. I've been in this almost as long. Have you ever found the perfect spot? They always, it's always not the right place. So we deal in an imperfect world and we deal with imperfect spots. But I believe that this one is about as good as it gets. And I'm really proud of this partnership and just wanted to make sure that the board and the public knew that this is moving forward. And we have a great operating agreement, and we're going to keep the ship real tight, right? Because I think the urgency of making this project show the community that it can be done in a very functional way is what will open doors for solving the homeless problem, or at least greatly reducing it.
Thank you. Supervisor Hart?
Yeah, well, thank you, Supervisor Williams, for those great comments. And taking off on them, you're right, perfection is often the enemy of the very good. And this is a very good proposal. It's a great partnership with Dignity Moves and with Good Samaritan. And there are a lot of eyes on this project because it's a really interesting model that has great promise. And we're all excited to get it rolling and get it up and working, and to work intensely to make sure that there aren't any issues so that we can have a model that's replicable around the county, because this is very hopeful and very exciting and a great moment to celebrate a milestone in the progress path to success.
Thank you. So we don't need a separate vote on this, so Madam Clerk?
Chair Hartman?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to make, thank you.
Sorry.
No,
Go
it's
ahead,
okay.
Supervisor Nelson.
I'd just like to make some comments on this item.
Please.
I'm equally as excited as I can be for a homeless project about this one. There's nothing more tragic than a permanent homeless shelter. And what I think that what Dignity Moves is doing here is an opportunity to really create that bridge opportunity and hopefully move those people that are sleeping on the streets into some kind of locked door structure so that they can eventually get on their feet and hopefully move into self-sufficiency in the future. So I'm really excited about this project. I'm looking forward to maybe working with Dignity Moves up here in the North County to find some locations that make sense. I do believe these types of projects are our pathway forward to addressing the encampment situation that we have in our community with people living in the streets. And so I'm really supportive of this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the project moves forward.
Supervisor Lavanino, did you have something to add?
Well, Madam Chair, just looking at it, I think it's important to point out to people that this is property that we own and that there was outreach that was done to the neighbors. And I'm really looking forward to the success of this. These are small pallet homes, 64 square feet. Each person will have their own, they're going to be inside, they're going to have their own front door, which is very important. And I think as we've seen maybe in some other cases that didn't go as well, I really appreciate the fact that the supervisors are talking about keeping a close eye on it, because as we do these, if they're successful, while there's still always going to be hesitancy on the part of the neighbors, I think if we can show success and how it can blend in, that it is preferred over homeless encampments, that we'll continue. We might be able to beat down a little bit of the resistance as far as showing a little bit of success. However, if these things get out of control, it's going to make it more and more and more difficult to continue to house our homeless individuals.
Thank you. So now turning to A9.
Chair Hartman and members of the board, administrative item number 9 is from the General Services Department. It is to consider recommendations regarding a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the city of Santa Barbara to provide parking permits for use of city parking lot 6, and this is in the 1st District.
Supervisor Williams.
Well, this is important to talk about the fact that creating these solutions requires partnership with the cities. And thus far, the city of Santa Barbara has been trying to create similar facilities. So they're putting money where their mouth is with us on tackling homelessness. The city of Goleta has contributed money towards the acquisition of Super 8. And we need those kind of partnerships. And this is an example of that, an MOU with the city so that the county employees who park where the Dignity Moves project will have a good place to park. And it's a good partnership with the city, and we hope to see more of them.
All right. Any Supervisor Lavanino Nelson up in Santa Maria? Seeing none. All right. May I have a motion to approve the balance of the administrative agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Hart,
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson,
Aye.
Supervisor Lavanino,
Aye.
Supervisor Williams,
Aye.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
So now turning to general public comment, it's time for anyone in the public who would like to make comment on items not on today's agenda. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hartman and members of the board. We currently have 3 requests to speak on general public comment, and if you are a member who has signed up for general public comment, please log in now to provide those comments. And we will begin with Jenny Elise Ramirez, to be followed by Amy Smith. Jenny?
Hi, can you guys all hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, wonderful. Hello, good morning, Chair Hartman and Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. My name is Jenny Elise Ramirez, and I am the Development Officer for Domestic Violence Solutions for Santa Barbara County. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and I am extremely concerned that 1 in 2 of our young people are experiencing dating abuse. This abuse has serious physical, mental, and academic consequences. Young people who experience abuse are more likely to be in physical fights or bring weapons to school. They exhibit higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse, as well as high-risk sexual behaviors. They are also more likely to attempt suicide. Most teens do not ask for help, and that is where us as a community need to step in. 50% of young people who experience physical or sexual abuse will attempt to take their own life. Our police officers respond to domestic violence disturbances more than any other crime, and it is one of the deadliest calls they will ever answer. Our staff here at Domestic Violence Solutions, as a part of our DIVERT, Domestic Violence Emergency Response Team program accompany these police officers on all of these dangerous calls. Domestic violence is a crime that is referred to most at the district attorney's office. Research knows prevention works to help end this issue. Today is actually Wear Orange Day. We wear orange to bring awareness to teen dating violence, helping to promote healthy relationships for our teens. Let's keep our teens safe, understanding what healthy relationships look like. Please join Domestic Violence Solutions, What is Love, and Youth Well on Valentine's Day from 3 to 5 p.m. at Paseo Nuevo with tabling and resources for teens and their friends and family, and also participate in some self-love activities. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez.
And we will remain on Zoom for Amy Smith, and then we will go to Justin Shores, who is our final speaker. Justin, if you are listening and would like to still provide comments on general public comment, please log in now to do so. Amy?
Yes, thank you again. I wanted to just address some of the things that the county supervisors could be doing. One that could be done very soon is to end the mandate of vaccination, so-called vaccination, which is actually a gene therapy, brand new technology, no long-term testing, liability protected for these giant corporations that have just made billions off of this whole operation. That could be ended for the employees. And especially because it's being shown to not be effective, and that the vaccinated are transmitting as successfully as anyone else. And that, and maybe even more so, being more susceptible. Some data indicates that. There could certainly be hearings held to examine this evidence and hear from different perspectives, have questions of the health officers actually be answered, since you guys are the elected officials. So, the health office, they decide whether they answer our questions or not. They're not our elected officials, they're not our representatives. We're depending on you guys. And I totally understand that no one would thank being in office when this thing came to pass, and that's not your fault. And we're all dealing as best we can with a very terrible situation, but this is things that are in your power to do, and you can make a difference. You could set the tone in the county by ending the mandate for an ineffective experimental product. You should be aware that looking at the data in England, researchers were noticing a pattern that suddenly, when a new wave of vaccination was coming, that unvaccinated people's death rate would go up quite a bit. And why would the unvaccinated who aren't having an intervention have a big change in their death rate, and not the vaccinated who were actually undergoing an intervention, a new thing? And it turns out they're being counted as unvaccinated if they had not reached the 2-week period after the intervention. So these plays with labeling and definitions create a very dishonest picture, because if you're looking at safety, you want to know, did the intervention take place? Did it not take place? It didn't take place within. If a person dies within 2 weeks of the shot, that's called an unvaccinated death. No, we have to examine if the vaccination had a role in that death and increase the likelihood of that death. So these kinds of things are what you can be taking leadership of. In Canada, we have this massive trucker convoy, freedom convoy. It's facing repression from the government. It's their materials are being stolen, their fuel to keep warm being stolen by the Ottawa government. You guys can be doing something very different, supporting truth, supporting freedom. Thank you so much.
And Chair Hartman, members of the board, that appears to be our final speaker on general public comment.
Okay, so with that, we close public comment and turn to our departmental agenda. Would you read item number 1 into the record, Madam Clerk?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, departmental item number 1 is from the Public Works Department, Board of Directors, and the Laguna County Sanitation District. It is a hearing to consider recommendation regarding the abolition of the improvement zone number 1 for Vintage Ranch Track 14,556, and this is in the 4th District.
And Mr. McAlpin, would you like to lead off?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Today, our presentation will be given by Marty Wilder, the county's utility manager.
Mr. Wilder, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hartman and members of the Board of Directors. A short background and summary for this action today. Vintage Ranch is Orchid Community Plan Key Set number 7, which is located between Stubblefield Road to the west and Black Oak Drive to the east. Its topography includes a large north-south running ravine in the middle of the property, and the lots to be developed on either side of the ravine are down gradient from the existing sewer system located in Black Oak Drive. Black Oak Drive and that sewer system were constructed by the Mesa Verde Tract. As early as 2000, the original tract developer for this project proposed a conventional sewer lift station to transport the wastewater to the gravity system. To fund tract-specific operation of this lift station, the board formed a benefit zone in 2006. The benefit zone would have collected a separate operation maintenance charge for the operation of that lift station, in addition to the general sewer utility charge. The project was sold to another developer in 2020, who subsequently changed the lot orientation and proposed a different method to move wastewater to the existing gravity sewer system. The proposed system, which is made by E1, provides for an individual grinder pump for each house and a low pressure force mains, as opposed to the conventional lift station. This system's been used extensively in the Carpinteria area and to some extent in Mission Canyon. Therefore, because the lift station is no longer needed, this action abolishes the zone that was formed in 2006. And with that, if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer them.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for Mr. Wilder? Anything up in Santa Maria?
Yes, Chair Hartman. A quick question for Mr. Wilder. Was there any funds collected for this district?
Chair Hartman and Director Nelson, no funds were ever collected because the map wasn't recorded and the original proposed lift station system was not constructed.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't see any other questions. Public comment?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, we have no request to speak on this item.
May I have a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
Second.
And would you call the roll?
Supervisor Hart? Supervisor Hart?
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lavanino?
Aye.
Supervisor Williams?
Aye.
And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And departmental item number 2.
Chair Hartman and members of the board, departmental item number 2 is from the Community Services Department. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding a response to the 2021 through 2022 grand jury report entitled "The Keys to Housing Homeless."
Thank you. Mr. Chapchian, will you introduce your team?
Absolutely. Good morning, Chair Hartman, members of the Board of Supervisors. Let me just first introduce the item. On November 19, 2021, Santa Barbara County Grand Jury published a report entitled "The Keys to Housing and Homeless." The grand jury's report was based on its study of 2 new state programs, Project Room Key and Project Home Key, and how those programs were implemented in Santa Barbara County over the past year. The report highlighted some of the barriers and successes of implementing these programs throughout the county and within the incorporated cities. The grand jury's report contains 6 findings and recommendations. The county's response to the grand jury reflects that the county agrees with all 6 of the findings. 4 of the recommendations have been implemented, and 2 of the recommendations will not be implemented because they are not warranted and have been otherwise addressed by the county. Staff will provide the board with a brief presentation and request the board chair approve the county's response for submission to the Santa Barbara County Grand Jury. This item is before the board today in order to respond to the presiding judge of the Superior Court by February 15, 2022 to meet the 90-day response requirements. And with that, I will turn this over to our Deputy Director for Housing and Community Development, Dinah Lockhart.
Good morning, Chair Hartman and members of the Board of Supervisors. Along with me is Kimberly Albers, who will be presenting on part of this presentation. So the board is being asked to consider the following recommendations. to consider and adopt the responses in Attachment A as amended, which includes additional information detailed in Recommendation 6 as the Board of Supervisors' response to the 2021-22 grand jury report, to authorize the chair to sign the letter included in Attachment A and forward that letter and responses to the presiding judge of the Superior Court, and to determine that the recommended actions are subject to environmental review under CEQA and consist of administrative activities of governments that will not result in direct or indirect physical changes to the environment. As Community Services Director George Chapchian included in his opening remarks, the grand jury found that there was overwhelming evidence that demonstrated the effectiveness of Project Roomkey in providing a non-congregate shelter option through the use of hotel and motel rooms in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. The state home key program took this approach one step further by providing significant state resources to local governments to convert hotels, motels, and underutilized properties for repurposing as interim or permanent housing. And while funding was competitive due to the great statewide need for non-congregate housing for unhoused and medically vulnerable community residents, additional constraints were also experienced at the local level as well, which were noted in other findings and recommendations in the report. The grand jury's report correctly noted that the county and community providers found it challenging to find motels and hotels willing to participate in either the room key program or home key. It has been difficult to find properties available for acquisition that were well suited and near service resources for use as home key properties. Last year, for example, the Housing Authority of Santa Barbara County had submitted a competitive bid for a motel property in Goleta, but the owner of the property had rejected the offer at that time. The grand jury also rightly found that Project Roomkey was successful in transitioning senior and medically fragile, unhoused community residents into housing placements. But without a sustained funding source beyond emergency federal or state funding, this model is not sustainable. As the county's response indicates, the county has implemented recommendation number 1. For example, Casa Omega is being developed on the county's Cayo Real campus to serve senior and medically fragile persons experiencing homelessness. The Isla Vista Pallet Shelter Program was another example, which served 41 persons over a 6-month period. This successful project was followed by the Board of Supervisors' acquisition of a shelter site with single, double, and triple occupancy rooms in Isla Vista. Because of the concerted efforts of county staff from multiple departments, including the Community Services Department, General Services, Fire, CEO, County Council, and Planning and Development, this facility was later awarded home key funds to purchase and operate the facility for the initial 5-year period. The grand jury recommended in recommendation 2 that the county's Community Services Department form an alliance with city councils to develop a roster of hotels and motels willing to participate in a room key type program. The county has addressed this recommendation by other means. For example, the county's General Services Real Property Division has sought out potential room key type sites. And other suggestions have come in from CityNet that regularly communicates with hotel and motel operators. These programs are designed to be short-term, interventionist models, which moves residents into more longer-term housing. Extending this type of model will require more sustainable funding sources beyond what was available via FEMA or COVID-19 emergency funding. As noted in the county's response to finding and recommendation 3 to the grand jury's report, the county has continued to work with local jurisdictions to identify home key sites. Under the first round of home key, a former county office building was converted into 14 studio units. And later in today's board meeting, the board will be acting on officially naming the Isla Vista home key interim housing site in recognition of Father John Hedges. The Hedges House of Hope program provides up to 50 shelter beds in 22 rooms with on-site services and housing navigation support. The Housing Authority of Santa Barbara County, with matching funding support from the county, has submitted 2 home key applications for potential sites in Santa Maria and Goleta. Much work still needs to be done on community support for these projects should funding be realized. The county agrees with findings 4, 5, and 6. Staff is pleased to report that recommendation 4, which calls for Community Services Department to create a team to replicate the successes of Home Key Studios in Lompoc and Hedges House of Hope, have been implemented. As I mentioned earlier, county department representatives have convened under the auspices of the CEO's office to work out logistical details and expedite new projects. One such effort, as we talked earlier, is the Dignity Moves project on Garden Street in Santa Barbara. County and city leaders have met over the past 2 years to work on and adopt the Phase 2 plan to address and end homelessness. This work has helped create a unified agenda, and conversations have moved to looking for additional sites, replicating successes, and learning from experiences. This collaborative effort has also resulted in a grant application to the state for competitive encampment resolution funding, which included representatives from jurisdictions, Union Pacific Railroad, and Caltrans. Other recent cross-collaboration successes which have resulted in additional resources to the county and its jurisdictions include the Permanent Local Housing Allocation, the Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, or HDAP, which will bring $1.5 million, the state's new Home Safe program, which will bring in $1 million in 2022. The Federal Home American Rescue Plan, or Home ARP, is helping to fund $680,000 in supportive services and $3 million in Home ARP as matching funds for home key applications. Staff has called additional attention to the response in Recommendation 6 because of additional detail on the county's investment of over $22 million in Federal American Rescue Plan Act funding as detailed in the county's Health and Human Services Plan to address homelessness. So I apologize for the small print, but fortunately it's 5 buckets that add up to $22 million in county ARP investment addressing homelessness. The creation of 100 beds at El Colegio, Hedges House of Hope, Bridge House, and Dignity Moves Santa Barbara, $13.5 million, leveraging $3 million toward 2 state home key projects, the creation of an encampment strategy, sanitation, and boots-on-the-ground outreach teams, $1.9 million, for specialized outreach, $2.5 million, to maximizing the MDT reach toward those who are most difficult to serve, with the objective of housing placement, and $1.3 million to expand outreach and engagement caseworkers. And now, Kimberly, if you're there.
Ms. Albers?
Good morning, this is Kimberly Albers. So we just wanted to end the presentation after the recommendations with just sharing some of those room key successes that we mentioned at the beginning. 204 individuals were served at the high-risk hotel for elderly and medically vulnerable persons, with 53% transitioning to permanent housing, 25% moving to other sheltered locations, and then a few that we were not able to house that either passed away, entered the hospital, or exited without shelter. And Dinah did a great job of mentioning these projects, but we just wanted you to see them again. You know, what does room key look like locally here now? We're moving forward with the Casa Omega project, the Isla Vista Lompoc Valley Pallets, Hedges House of Hope, which we'll be talking about in just a few minutes, Dignity Move Santa Barbara, and Public Health continues to offer room key rooms for isolation and quarantine. We go to the next slide. And of course, the home key efforts that again have been mentioned in the recommendations, but just for clarity here, the 2 funded projects, the Home Key Studios in Lompoc and the Isla Vista Shelter have been funded through the state home key program. And we have the 2 additional hotel conversion projects that we are diligently working on with the application submitted, but much work to do yet. So the state of California allocated $1.45 billion for this year. That round is going now. And then we anticipate the $1.3 billion in the 22-23 budget. So home key opportunities will continue on as we can identify sites. And we'll go to the next slide. And back to the recommended actions. So we're asking again that the board consider and adopt the responses in attachment A and authorize the chair to sign our response letter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Albers. Supervisor Hart.
Yeah, I just want to thank the grand jury for bringing attention to these really important projects and programs at the state level and how we're implementing them locally. They really did a lot of work to dive into these projects and programs, and I think the public should be really pleased that we are making progress. It is not easy to do, as we've heard earlier about some of the challenges involved in these projects, but the successes are real, and there are individual people, our neighbors, who have been living on the street for many, many years in circumstances that are really difficult for us to contemplate, and the trauma that they experience and the tragedy that is often their lives on the street makes us flinch when we walk by, and it's a natural reaction, but it is not helping the problem. We need to have effective solutions to get people off the street, and this experimentation using hotels and commercial buildings and providing separate living space for folks in a dignified way has really hit on the right solution. And the success is evident in the number of people that were actually moving off the street. In the past 2 years, each of the last 2 years, we have moved 700 people from homelessness, living on the street, into sheltered living situations. And that's pretty extraordinary. When you think about the point-in-time count countywide, there's about 2,000 people that have been identified in previous point-in-time counts countywide. And if that number stayed static and we were able to house 700 people a year, we'd be well on our way to solving this problem. Unfortunately, that number isn't static. And this terrible situation that we find ourselves in with the pandemic and the trauma that comes from that is exacerbating homelessness, for unaffordable rents, the economic situations. All of these forces are unfortunately driving more people into homelessness. So we are trying to get folks on this path that works and get all of the local governments in the county of Santa Barbara aligned on the same strategy. That's not been an easy undertaking. We have the regional elected officials forum to address homelessness. It's a vehicle to bring everybody together, representatives from each of the incorporated cities in the county and county leadership. Supervisor Hartman and I serve on that forum. And we have a lot of agreement in those discussions because the evidence and the track record is pretty persuasive. But there have been hiccups too. And most recently, we had a pretty serious hiccup in working with the city of Santa Maria. And I think that just demonstrates that we can't collaborate enough, we can't communicate enough, we can't be persistent enough. But we're going to continue because we know now that this approach works. The challenge will be sustaining it, as Ms. Lockhart so perfectly described. The one-time, very, very serious, generous, incredibly important one-time, maybe not one time, hopefully more than one time, grants that have come from the state government, the money that we got from the federal government, from the American Rescue Plan, have enabled us to put $22 million of local county money to leverage almost more than $40 million, actually, potentially. We don't know that for sure, but that there's a really good chance that we could bring in $40 million more to provide the units and provide the services necessary to make this project sustainable for at least 3 years. But that's the trick, is how are we going to generate the revenue or identify the revenue or find some way to keep the services intact as we provide more units and implement this model. And that is really the rub of the whole thing. And I think the grand jury is very aspirational in its goal, identify more sites, get more of these projects going. Yes, we agree. That's our response to the grand jury. But how we do that is the challenge. And so I'd urge anybody who's speaking with their state or federal elected officials to thank them profusely for what they have done and urge them to continue to do more, because we need the resources to continue to make progress. And our citizens and our neighbors demand that and deserve that.
Supervisor Williams?
Well, I think this is the most agreement I've ever seen in 5 years on the board with a grand jury finding. And that's a good sign. It's because of two things. It's because, number one, of the dynamism of the level of progress that these staff and this board has made in the last couple of years. Normally, even when there's a lot of recommendations we agree with, it takes a while to get there. This level of progress for the first time that I've seen in addressing homelessness in a couple decades worth of trying. This is the fastest momentum, the most momentum I've ever seen, and so it enables staff when they're writing the proposed letter for Chair Hartman to sign that they're able to say, "Hey, we already did that," and that is great. Even the points of disagreement really aren't. Like the recommendation 5, I think staff could have written already done, because that's what the elected leaders forum is. There's several plans of working together and funding to do one of these projects. So, I think, just as accurately, we could have said already implemented. And the other one was just implemented not in the way that the grand jury envisioned, by another route. So this is good. I think the other thing, hopefully it's an indication of, is really a level of willingness to be constructive that mainly comes out of the exhaustion of lack of progress that took place previous to maybe the last couple of years. I mean, I think the amount of engagement and planning during the 10-year plan in chronic homelessness was amazing, but there just wasn't any money associated with it. And I think too often it's been, as you articulated earlier, the quest for the perfect site being the enemy of the good site. And I think fortunately people are ready for solutions, and that more ready for solutions than they ever have been.
Supervisor Lavanino or Supervisor Nelson?
I think I could just ditto everything that's been said. I don't have anything additional to add.
Okay. And Supervisor Nelson, same?
Yes, nor do I. Thank you.
Okay. Go to public comment. Madam Clerk?
Chair Hartman, excuse me, Chair Hartman and members of the board, we have no requests to speak on this item.
May I have a motion for staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Hart?
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lavanino?
Aye.
Supervisor Williams?
Aye.
And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and now we're going to just take a short 5-minute break, no longer, so that our translators can have a little break. And we'll be back by 10:30. So welcome back to our February 8th Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors meeting here in Santa Barbara. And Supervisors Nelson and Lavanino are participating from our Santa Maria Board hearing room. Madam Clerk, would you read item number 3 into the record, please?
Chair Hartman and members of the board. Departmental item number 3 is from the County Executive Office. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding the nomination to rename county-owned El Colegio property to Hedges House of Hope. And there is a unanimous vote required on this item.
Ms. McGinty?
Good morning, Chair Hartman and members of the board. Today, the County Executive Office, along with the Community Services Division, will be presenting a nomination to your board to request the renaming of the county-owned El Colegio property located at 6549 El Colegio Road to Hedges House of Hope in memory of Father John Stephen Hedges. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the administrative policy to name county assets. The naming of county assets policy was approved by your board on November 9th, 2021. It establishes a process to name county-owned assets, such as buildings, open space, transportation, flood control structures, objects, eligible historic assets, programs, or any part thereof, after specific individuals or organizations. The renaming of the El Colegio property in nomination satisfies the criteria guidelines in the policy, with the exception of the deceased individual criteria. In December 2021, the Community Services Department submitted a nomination packet to the County Executive Office, which we have reviewed to rename the county-owned property to the Hedges House of Hope in honor of Very Reverend Father John Stephen Hedges. Because the nomination satisfies the majority of the criteria, the only exception to this was the deceased individual criteria. In the naming policy, it states that generally county-owned facilities shall not be named after a person who has been deceased less than a year, which is why we are requesting your board to consider this nomination as an exception, which requires unanimous approval to your board. In accordance with this policy, your board will need to make a unanimous determination to approve the renaming of this property. At this time, I will turn it over to Community Services Division, Dinah Lockhart, to present a little bit more about the El Colegio property.
Thank you, Jasmine. The acquisition of the property at El Colegio Road began in response to addressing the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on the unhoused community members in and around the Isla Vista community. Originally permitted in 1959, which is the same year my parents married, by the way, as a sorority house, the property has sheltered various segments of the community over the years, including students and oil platform workers. Moving swiftly, within 8 months, the county was able to purchase the site in November of 2021. The acquisition and use of El Colegio as the Hedges House of Hope couldn't have happened without a number of county departments working cooperatively, including General Services, Community Services, Planning and Development, CEO, County Council, Fire, and Behavioral Wellness, among others. The success of the interim housing site hinged on finding the right partner, and Good Samaritan Shelter responded to the county's request for proposals to operate the Hedges House of Hope, providing case management, housing navigation, and other services to guests. Representing Good Sam at today's presentation today is Sylvia Bernard, Executive Director, Kirsten Cahoon, and the Hedges House of Hope staff, which is Susana Ortega, Program Manager, Nathan Guajardo, Case Manager, and Ed Barber, Staff Support. This slide summarizes some of the many areas that Father Hedges worked to improve the lives of community residents throughout Santa Barbara County, including the St. Bridges Fellowship, the County Sheriff's Department, Doctors Without Walls, Red Cross, and often working as a first responder during a crisis. Also in the audience today is Mrs. Melissa Hedges, son Benjamin Hedges, daughter Sarah Brassel, and family friends, including Maggie Sanchez, Doctors Without Walls, Father Bob Fox, Chaplain Jerry Gray, and Bob Gates. Other letters of support which have come in include the name in favor of the naming have also been submitted by Dr. Jason Pryskowski and Mimi Elder. And with that, I will conclude this staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Should we go to public comment first?
Chair Hartman and members of the board, we have 9 requests to speak on this item. And we are going to begin here in Santa Barbara with Benjamin Hedges. Benjamin, and then we will return, and then we will go to Zoom for Marguerite Sanchez.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm Benjamin Hedges. I'm Father John's son. I'm here with my mother, Melissa, and my sister, Sarah. And we just want to really thank you for all your support and the amazing things that are happening at the El Colegio property. We want to just give our support to that and are very pleased to hear about the opportunity to rename it the Hedges House of Hope. My father would have loved to be continuing to be a part of this effort in the town that he called home, and we are really pleased to be here today, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you for sharing your father with the community.
We will now go to Zoom for Marguerite Sanchez, and then we will return to the Santa Barbara hearing room for Friar Nicholas Spire. Thank you. Marguerite, we have unmuted you on our end. You may need to unmute on your end. There you go. Please proceed.
Okay. In 2021, the world lost one of its finest human beings. Father John Stephen Hedges was my friend, my mentor, and my soul brother. I am here to support the County of Santa Barbara permanently naming the transitional shelter in Isla Vista to the Hedges House of Hope in honor of this incredible man who gave so much to our community and to the world. My name is Maggie Sanchez. I am a founding member and executive director of Doctors Without Walls, Santa Barbara Street Medicine. The first time I met Father John was in his office in a little trailer outside of St. Athanasius Church in Isla Vista. 5 people had come together to discuss the possibility of creating a nonprofit that would provide free medical care to the unsheltered populations in Santa Barbara County. He spoke so softly and gently about his vision of helping God's poorest with humility, integrity, and love. That meeting would change the course of my life. 12 years ago, I remember during a very difficult time for Doctors Without Walls, Father John leading the board of directors into St. Athanasius Church for our monthly board meeting. Tempers, attitudes, and vanities subsided as we felt the holiness in that church and Father John guiding us to a place of peace. Surrounded by these large icons of saints, Doctors Without Walls forged through our problems and remembered our mission and why it was so critically important to continue our work. I will never forget the power of that meeting. It's been very hard to know that I will not walk alongside and listen to Father John's many reasons why the world needs us now more than ever. Through Father John's tireless compassion and belief in the work of Doctors Without Walls in 2021, Doctors Without Walls served 4,966 people. Doctors Without Walls has administered the COVID-19 vaccine to over 1,000 of our county's unsheltered and marginally sheltered populations, representing 58% of our county's homeless population. This courageous man, who was a first responder at heart, always there to provide support, whether it be the city police chief of New Orleans during the aftermath of Katrina, supporting the grieving families of the firefighters who lost their lives in Arizona, or during a meal share with the homeless of Isla Vista, Father John was present. To me, Father John has always been Aslan, the lion in the C.S. Lewis classic, The Chronicles of Narnia. Aslan was the life-affirming mystical lion who appeared time and time to restore balance and empower others. It was Aslan's mystical breath that brought those drained of feeling back to life by thawing their numbness. This is how Father John lived. He was a lion-hearted man. He brought the gift of hope and encouragement to so many who were in the depths of despair. Thank you.
We will now return to the Santa Barbara hearing room for Father Nicholas Spire to be followed by Chaplain Gates. Father Spire.
Thank you again for considering this proposal. I labored with Father John for 45 years in Isla Vista in the St. Athanasius community. I thought it would be important to share just one story of the many, because I think it speaks a little bit more to how he dealt with individuals. There was a gentleman on the streets that had substance issues, and he was able to help him overcome these issues. And then he asked him a question. He said, "When's the last time you talked to your father?" He said, 25 years ago. He said, "Let me see if I can find his phone number." So he chased his phone number down, and 25 years later, this father got a phone call from his son, who he thought was dead. And weeping, obviously, on both sides of the phone, this young man's brother was headed out to California for a business meeting, and his brother met again after 25 years of being separated. So this is his life. This is Father's life. This is not an odd circumstance for him. And so when you say hope, Hedges House of Hope, this word signifies and identifies with Father John. I want to thank you again. He's a beloved member of our community and always is remembered. But thank you, the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for sharing that story.
We will now go to Chaplain Gates to be followed by Spencer Brandt. Chaplain Gates.
Right. I would really appreciate what you're doing for Father John. I met Father John at Katrina. We were both deployed by the Red Cross to New Orleans area. We become fast friends, and we had many, many, many conversations after that, and relating together, as he was a chaplain also with the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department, as I am. But Father John had a heart for people, and it's a heart that I looked at, and I've been a pastor for 40 years, and I feel sometimes so small compared to his heart, that he was able to reach out to those that really had need and see beyond their situation and circumstances and see beyond to give them hope. And that's what this house represents. It represents hope. And I think hope was a part of John's life. He ministered not only around in this community in Isla Vista, but also nationwide. He was called out by the Red Cross in Joplin, I know about, and several other areas that were devastated by storms. And he was always there. And I remember when he came back, he was always exhausted because he had given everything that he had. And I know that he gave everything that he had to the community of Isla Vista. I talked to him many times, and as we shared together, it's called lifting each other up. And at times, John did need to be lifted up, but there are also times when he lifted everybody else up in spite of his own weaknesses. So I truly would recommend that this house be renamed just for him. It's a house of hope, and that's what he represented to this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We will now go to Spencer Brandt to be followed by Ed Barber. Spencer?
Chair Hartman and Board of Supervisors, I could think of no better way to honor the legacy of such an incredible man who had such grace, compassion, and care. I mean, listen to all the stories that you're hearing today about his legacy. I had the honor of serving with Father John beginning in 2016 when he was elected to the Isla Vista Community Services District Board of Directors. And for 4 years, Father John worked diligently to help build our district and get us off the ground. He helped create a work experience program for those who were formerly experiencing homelessness. And he worked to create a program partnership with the UCPD Police Department to better serve survivors of sexual violence in Isla Vista. In those countless board meetings where I'm sure we kept him up past his bedtime more than once, he was always the perennial source of wisdom for us colleagues. He had a way of cutting to the moral core of any issue that was profound. Today, with the Good Samaritan facility in Isla Vista, we've heard about how much success it's had. We've been able to to provide homes for dozens of folks who were sleeping on our streets and in our parks. And I could think of no better way to better honor Father John's legacy than to associate with him with such an incredible project. And I really want to thank the staff at Good Samaritan and the community services staff who has worked so diligently to make this project happen, and to your board for investing in these important solutions to homelessness, real tangible solutions. I think that commitment to solving this crisis is a bigger testament and honor to his legacy than anything that any of us could do or say today. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to Ed Barber, to be followed by Kristen Cahoon. Ed?
Good morning, everybody. Let's see, my name is Edward Barber. I was fortunate to be part of the IV pallet shelter, not as staff, but as a resident. After being one of the blessed ones to be housed in permanent housings, thanks to the constant and unconditional support of Director Kristen Cahoon and now Program Manager Susanna Ortega. I became part of the team at Hedges House of Hope. This is not a regular job to me. The shelter has more meaning to me than beyond any words that I can express. It is a home to those from our community that are in need of our services. I am honored to have been given the opportunity to learn and to give back to those in need. Giving and receiving respect to all residents, treating others that way as I was treated, and demonstrating that change can happen and will happen. I am forever grateful to be part of the Hedges House of Hope shelter and the real definition of a shelter, a house of hope. Thank you for listening to me, and also too, I'd like to thank our new program manager here, Mr. Nathan, another great guy, and the whole staff with Good Samaritan. Anyways,
Thank you, Ed, for being here and for the work that you do.
well, thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kristen Cahoon, to be followed by Sylvia Bernard.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Kirsten Cahoon. I'm the Director of Homeless Services for Good Samaritan Shelter. I have had the honor to have supervised the Pallet Shelter Project and now the amazing, soon-to-be officially named, the Hedges House of Hope. It is an honor to be here for this very meaningful occasion. I met Father John the first time 10 years ago when I started my career with Good Samaritan. He had a client from Isla Vista that had made his way to my Santa Maria shelter. He was a veteran and was extremely special to Father John. We reached out to let him know that he was okay and where he was staying. The very next day, I had a knock on my office door. Lo and behold, it was Father John. We sat together for hours with this veteran, making a plan for his success. I was truly mesmerized. Just starting my career in homeless services, I was in front of the best teacher that my path would ever cross. He had such a calmness about him, and the words of encouragement and support that he was sharing made me want to be a better person. Who would have known throughout my 10 years with Good Sam that our paths would continue to cross? There was so much worry in the community about the Pallet Shelter Project, but it seemed like once Father John spoke in support of it, it was like the entire city of Isla Vista calmed down. He came to the pallets right after we opened. I was so excited for him to see this project in the town that he was such an advocate. He shared his thoughts, he was honest, and he was gracious. In true Father John style, he opened up his wallet, handed us some cash, and said, "Go get whatever the people that live here need." Unfortunately, he prayed for the shelter and said that he would be back. Unfortunately, he never made it back. But never have I been part of a project that was filled with so many miracles. The people that live there seek treatment. We were able to house an incredible amount of people. There were so many miraculous things that happened during this project that I can only believe that that was Father John's hand. Then we were blessed with a new Isla Vista shelter. I knew in my heart that this momentum was going to continue there. With an amazing team and the community behind us, we could change the lives of Father John's homeless friends in Isla Vista and Goleta. So there is nothing more perfect than officially naming this space the Hedges House of Hope. And my staff and I, we have our leadership staff here today, want to make a commitment to the Hedges family that we will always lead with his grace and his honesty and his integrity. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to work under his name.
Thank you. And I have to mention this, that when we started the pallet shelters, we didn't know, we had a very short window of time, and we didn't really have a provider. And so Good Samaritan, it was December, and they stood up and said they would do it. And they decided they would do it because Kirsten Calhoun said, I will give my Christmas vacation to working here and getting this up off the ground. So thank you.
We will now go to Sylvia Bernard, to be followed by Melissa Hedges, who is our final speaker. Sylvia?
I'm Sylvia Bernard. I'm the Executive Director of Good Samaritan Shelter, and I have been at Good Samaritan Shelter for 25 years this year. And during that entire time, I've been in the same space as Father John Hedges. At first, we didn't really know each other and worked from afar. Good Samaritan was a very small organization. And as we grew, we really started to connect. And he also connected with a lot of my staff, like Kirsten, where he knew that his heart to serve this population was shared with my staff as well. Going to Isla Vista, there was, a lot of uncertainty, there was a lot of fear, and many community members weren't sure that we should put the pallet shelters where they were. And so I had been encouraged to reach out to Father John, and he was so great. He was just asking the questions like, is it the right place? And I said, well, if not there, where? And he said, well, there might be options. And I said, I just feel like we need to get in there and do it. And so we talked, and at the end of the conversation, he said, well, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, maybe we should pray about it. And so the next day I heard that he was singing our praises and he was ready for us to come. So we're really excited about that. I also was there the day that Father John Hedges came by the pallet shelters with Kirsten, and he was just so excited that Good Samaritan had made their way down to South County, and I do believe that, he always saw life as everyone had hope and everyone had the ability to turn their life around. And I feel like Hedges House of Hope, it carries that mission. And so we're just so proud to be here today and to be a part of the decision, and really proud to be able to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Good Samaritan.
And we will now go to our final speaker, Melissa Hedges. Melissa?
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm Father John's wife, Melissa Hedges. Our family wishes to thank the Board of Supervisors and Good Samaritan for considering the name Hedges House of Hope. Father John is gone physically, and we miss him so. As time passes, memories can fade, but by naming this loving home Hedges House of Hope, Father John's spirit and his work lives on. What a gift to our family, and such an honor to his hope and his work for those vulnerable. Who is Father John? Our family is so touched that everybody seems to have a, quote, Father John story. We love hearing these stories, bringing him closer to us. He had thousands of, he called them close friends, when typically a person only has just a few. And truly, everybody, you were all his close friends. So this is a very special day for the family, keeping Father John's spirit alive, encouraging those who live here to have hope. And we're truly grateful.
Thank you. And Melissa, we have a resolution to present to you. This was awarded via Zoom, and I'd just like to give it to you now. And you were married for how long?
over 50 years. It would be this December, it would be 51 years. And we met when I was 17, so anyway, it's real. Oh, thank you. Benjamin and Sarah.
We didn't get a chance to take this picture before, so we'd like to do it now if you could.
So tell us what to do.
Let's see, there we go. Face me.
Hang on, just
So with that, I close public comment and we come back to the board. Supervisor Williams?
Well, I've found out from life that that people's contributions to this world are shaped, inspired, and given space by their family. So I want to thank the Hedges family for the space, inspiration, and support, and the St. Athanasius congregation for supporting Father John's ministry. You know, it's very interesting how you can affect people that you have that operate at the periphery of your world, right? I was maybe at the periphery of your world, but Father John touched me deeply. You know, I was the kind of kid who would show up to St. Athanasius youth group mainly to argue with the priests. And Father John influenced me. You know, I was not a believer then. I became a believer, and he was part of that transformation. And he did it by the exhibiting the love and keeping the main thing, the substance of the love of God. And you know, he's also proof that you can kind of you can be a priest, a county employee, an elected official, a chaplain, and pretty much do the same thing in all of those jobs, which is work to save people. And he had what appeared to me an unshakable faith in God, Isla Vista, and the fact that every human being is redeemable. And no matter how ornery they are, no matter how much problems they are, no matter how much darkness they've fallen in. And that touches me greatly, and I feel like the moment that we're in of making progress on homelessness must give his soul some great peace. Well, knowing him, probably not peace, but more energy. And it's very gratifying to see that a piece of our old hometown will be named after that contribution.
Supervisor Hart.
I just want to thank everybody who came today, the family members, colleagues, friends. Father John was a giant in our community, and it is so perfect to be naming the El Colegio property Hedges House of Hope. When I was thinking about what I would say today, Dr. Jason Protowski sent an email that so perfectly sums up Dr. John that I can't improve upon it, and I just want to read parts of it into the record. Dr. Protowski said, "One of the great honors of my life has been to serve our community during crisis, turbulence, and celebration alongside my friend, Father John Stephen Hedges. We walked the homeless camps along the railroad tracks, providing free medical care to the discarded and destitute. I as a doctor and Father John as an instrument of hope. I had a stethoscope, he had a sheriff's badge, clergy collar, water shoes with dark socks, and a truly ugly satchel over his shoulder filled with mysterious supplies. I tended to people's feet and teeth, he tended to their souls. We responded to mass shootings, fires, mudslides, acts of God, and catastrophes of malevolent intent. In the darkest hours, with bleak uncertainty and malignant fear, Father John's baritone voice, his shoulder relaxed back, "Oh mercy," followed by a philosophical, tangential, poetic rant about moral responsibility and us, the instruments of hope. And after the victims of disaster had their bones reset and splinted to and their bleeding gashes tended to, Father John reminded us all that now the real work begins as we turn our attention to the warriors, healers, first responders, and public servants who bared the traumatic burden of keeping our community safe during crisis. He said, "Jason, we are sheepdogs and we take care of our people." Dr. Protowski continued, "I feel Father John's haunting absence. What inspiring words of hope would he give us today? Remind us to wake up tomorrow and keep taking care of sick patients. Remind us to wake up tomorrow and keep taking care of each other. Remind us that there is always hope and that hope is ours to build together as brothers and sisters. I miss my friend, Father John. He has always been a steady voice of hope and a steady reminder that we have the courage, solidarity, perseverance, and grit to get through this crisis together. Naming a building will not replace his voice, but it's a good start and a reminder for all of us, including the students who walk by that building every day, to pick up his mantle and remind each other, oh mercy, we take care of our community, we take care of our people, there is always hope."
There is always hope. Supervisors Nelson or Lavanino?
Madam Chair, thank you. And again, yeah, just thank you to Father John's family for sharing him with us and with the community. I kind of grew up in a church where everybody talked about things and nobody really did too much. And he is just the exact opposite of that, you know. I always appreciated when I would come into the boardroom and he would be in the audience because I knew he had a calming influence and he was, he was a peacemaker. And so, as it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. So he's definitely one of those, and we're going to miss him. And I think this is the smallest, very insignificant. It seems like whatever we could do more, we should. But I think this is it'll be there forever. And as Supervisor Hart said, for all the students walking by to be able to look up and see that name, maybe it'll raise a little question in their mind and do a little homework about Father Hedges, because he definitely was a walking example of what we all need to be. And I think, as somebody else stated, that I think it's the ultimate compliment you can pay somebody is that they made you want to be a better person. And I think everybody can look to Father Hedges and know that.
Supervisor Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hartman. I never had the privilege of meeting Father Hedges, but I am honored today to be a part of this vote. This is obviously a special man, a true public servant. And hearing the different comments that were made today, you know, what I'm hearing that is different about him than any other servant is that he really saw people and built relationship. And I think that that's the challenge we all have on a day-to-day basis, is to meet people where they're at. And that's a talent that he obviously possessed, and I think one that we should all emulate. And again, like I said, it's gonna be an honor to vote to name this after him. Thank you.
Thank you. Father John was a catalyst. He really helped to pull together what Nick Welsh, the journalist, has called the dream team. and that includes Sylvia and Kirsten and Julie Lawrence and Dinah and Kimberly. And one name I wanted to mention too, and that is Frank Thompson. I remember that he actually called me and said, I think you're not looking closely enough at this building. Would you go out and reevaluate it? And we did indeed, and it turned out that it was an ideal site to bring people after the pallet shelter. My remarks come from my Facebook post. I remember Father John proudly showing me around the Pescadero lofts, telling me about the lives he'd seen transformed there. I remember him describing the many catastrophic disasters throughout the country and county that he had responded to. I will remember that even when he was seriously attacked in his own home, he was not vindictive, but kind. I remember, and I remember this so clearly, the eloquent remarks at the vigil to mourn those lives lost in the Conception dive boat disaster. His words rang above us all to meet the uncomprehending grief. He loved Isla Vista and made it his home for over 50 years. He was a member of the first CSD board bringing self-governance to IV. It was his support that enabled us to get the different parts of the community to come together around the Pallet Park, and I regard that as one of the top accomplishments of my tenure on the board. Father John consistently leaned towards the pain, the suffering, and confusion, rather than sinking from it. His mission was to bring comfort to people in dire straits and the people who tended them, the first responders and caregivers. I often wonder how he kept this up throughout his life. He believed in the goodness of humanity despite seeing people at their worst. He never wavered from his religious conviction despite the horrific calamities to which he bore witness. He didn't view the world through rose-colored glasses. He was nothing if not a realist, but he stayed buoyantly optimistic, and that picture says it all, and was able to inspire that in others. This is the opportunity that this naming of the Hedges House of Hope represents, inspiring optimism that change for the better is indeed possible. Thank you, everyone who could be here today. We really needed this in-person opportunity to pay tribute to Father John. With that, I'd like a motion.
So moved. Second.
And Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Supervisor Hart,
Aye.
Supervisor Nelson,
Aye.
Supervisor Lavanino,
Aye.
Supervisor Williams,
Aye.
and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion
Passed
passes.
unanimously. Yes. Officially, the Hedges House of Hope. Again, thank you everyone for being here. Now we go to County Council to tell us what will be in closed session today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. In closed session today, we have one item of existing litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9. It's Santa Barbara Superior Court Case Number 20 CV 02425, and it's County of Santa Barbara versus Good Samaritan Services. Time estimate is about 30 minutes.
Okay, let's go directly to closed session, and then we'll be back here by noon to close out the meeting. Convening our meeting of February 8th, 2022, the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. County Council, will you please report out from closed session today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board met in closed session on one item of existing litigation, County of Santa Barbara versus Good Samaritan Services, and the board took no reportable action.
Thank you. We will be adjourning today's meeting in memory of former Santa Barbara educator and legislator Gary Hart. Supervisor Hart, no relation. I believe you have a few comments you'd like to make.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hartman. I just wanted to recognize the many contributions that State Senator Gary Hart made to our community in his long tenure as a local legislator and a community activist. Senator Hart was first elected to the California State Assembly in 1974 and then elected to the State Senate in 1982, where I had the opportunity to work very closely with him as a young staffer to then Assemblyman Jack O'Connell. And Senator Hart was just a gentleman and a really principled legislator who worked really effectively in the education sphere, working on reducing class size and improving education for California students. And maybe his most important legacy locally was his work on behalf of the environment. He was probably the first state legislator to really champion environmental issues as our representative in Sacramento, and his legacy has continued on through others who worked for him. Former Supervisor Naomi Schwartz was Gary's chief of staff, and then Congressman Carbajal was also Naomi Schwartz's chief of staff. So there's a long legacy of community service that was imprinted in many people in our community's minds because of the work that Senator Hart did on behalf of our community. He will be missed, and his contributions will continue for years to come.
Supervisor Williams.
Just wanted to add, he successfully shepherded through one of the most significant levels of reform in education in a long time. And he was really centered on student success. And he, when I was in the legislature, which wasn't that long ago, he roped me into, with a moral cause in mind, pretty tough battles on student success and on our higher education system in this case, valuing completion and making that happen as a value in our community college system. And he fought hard on those issues. So he never lost his commitment, long after he was out of public office, never lost his commitment in making sure that students from K towards college graduation would have a good shot in this state.
He was a courageous leader, and I think he left his imprint on many young leaders in our community. With that, we adjourn today's meeting, and we will reconvene February 15th.